Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Automated Advantage. Today we have Justin Sirotin on, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for having me on. My name's Justin Sirotin. I run a firm called Octo, which is a bit of a merging of traditional marketing, experiential marketing, and product development. We do strategy, product, and experiences for both large organizations at one end and startups between sort of seed plus, and series B, C, D, whatever series we're in these days, depending on who you ask. We've been around for a long time, about 18 years, and I've been doing this kind of work for nearly 30, which is scary to say out loud.
You look so young, and you have a great
Oh,
hairstyle. You have a great hairstyle. It's like
that's
that's
right.
um,
Yeah.
so so maybe your background, and tell us how this came about. You know what your background was. You were doing something and then saw this gap in the market, or wanted to be your own boss, or whatever it was.
It's a little less intentional than I think most. So coming out of school, I have an industrial design degree. That's where I started. I went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, which for anyone who doesn't know about that school, that is one of the largest engineering schools in the world, and certainly in the United States. So I was pretty heavily influenced by the technical side of the university, and ended up sort of drifting over to the engineering quad more and more and more. Got out of school, took a job as a traditional industrial designer in a firm that did from earliest stage concepts all the way through to supply. They had a relationship with factories in China. They had a partnership. It was more than a partnership. It was a sister company in Shenzhen at a time when, so my first trip to China was 1999. That world is very different from 99 to 2026. So I got really quickly inundated into the manufacturing world, into the production world, into the engineering world as a part of that job. I ended up running a division of theirs at a pretty young age. Got handed a relatively large piece of the business. And when I left, I had intended to just go start a product company. So I started a furniture company right out of that job. That furniture company was a little bit odd. We made pool tables, foosball tables, poker tables, all made in the United States, all very high end, all targeting a very wealthy customer. And what I learned very quickly was that it's hard to sell into an audience that you don't innately belong to. Right? Like I have been in Michael Jordan's house in Jupiter, Florida. I grew up in Chicago in the 80s. He was like everybody's idol. I've been in his home installing a pool table, and you look around this place and you're just like, I don't even understand this. It's 40,000 square feet. It's very nicely appointed. We're selling him a pool table that cost $1 zillion. And you just realize, like, if you don't understand your customer, it's very hard to know how to sell to that customer. It's very hard to connect to that customer. And so in the process, the firm that I worked for, it's a good lesson in maintaining good relationships. The firm that I worked for was already divisionalized. I had the consumer industrial division, which was round numbers $10 million. They ended up going full med device. The founder or co-founder of the company called me and he said, hey, we're going to jettison what were your customers. Are you interested in taking some phone calls? And I said, yes, I need money. And so that's kind of the beginning of Octo. It sort of happened just because out of necessity more than anything. And I knew how to run that business. I could relate to that business. And so that's what scaled. And the pool table business died in 2015, which should have been 2012. Like it lived a few years longer than it should have out of willpower.
There you go.
So that's the beginnings of this company, and it's gone through a lot of different twists and turns, starting with a company similar to the one I was with before, design, engineer, supply, to now being much more strategic in the way that we build things, much more digital in the solutions we provide. And this merging of marketing and product has become a place where we've been able to carve out some points of differentiation, because I feel very strongly that the way that we have specialized our world has caused a disconnect between the way we present ideas and the way those ideas embody in the marketplace. That distance is getting wider. And I think AI is making it worse, not better. So
maybe let's dig into that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll give you a really easy example. I was at an event on Tuesday at what is effectively a co-working space for venture capital. So I'm in a room with, I don't even know how many billions of dollars under management, a lot of money under management. We're talking about the manufacturing sector. It's hosted by MIT, A16Z. So you have the big names of venture looking at a very hard problem, which is manufacturing. And I'm talking to one of the LPs and a GP from one of the funds. And I was just asking them about how they are vetting AI as a term inside of a narrative for a startup. And we all came back to this idea that we are AI washing. Not everyone. There is a lot of AI washing going on, not just at the startup space, but through the entire value stack across the entire industrial world. And it's becoming harder and harder to define, well, what about what you're doing is actually using AI? First of all, most people don't know what AI actually is. Let's just say that. Most people don't really understand where its value lies. There's a lot of confusion between ML and AI. ML has been around for a long time. Most people are actually just using ML to do things and not using AI, which is fine, but it doesn't carry the same appeal. So we're just writing these words, and then the solution shows up and you say, I think this is just all hard-coded and you don't need any AI at all. And I don't understand why I had this conversation about physical AI with you, whatever it was, 3 days ago, because the thing you just handed me is a robot that you program. And so this growing, it's been going on for a long time. It's happening in the consumer brands world. It's been happening with greenwashing. It's been happening in the technology space, where we have marketing teams that write about stuff. We have product teams that build stuff, and they aren't connected together in a tangible way to ensure that they're aligned around the same value proposition. So if I were to say that's the gap that we have identified and are filling, that would be it. It's like these two things, when treated separately, drift apart. And that's bad. These two things, when treated together, can really cohesively align, which allows you to tell a story to a customer and then prove that you are right with the thing you give them. And that's the companies that do that, they're just winning everywhere. And the companies that don't can sometimes raise a lot of money and then just disappear.
Yeah, and it's super interesting concept that you're talking about there. And I mean, it's been the age-old thing, right? I ran sales for some large corporations, and we were often dictated to or never asked an opinion on what marketing should look like. It was some marketing expert that put some stuff out there, and then you're like, well, nobody in my territory is interested in that. So it's
Exactly.
been the story of my life.
Yeah, you have that version of that story, which is the audience isn't interested in what you're telling them. And then you have the inverse, which I actually think is more dangerous, which is the audience is very interested in what you're telling them, but the thing we make doesn't do that. And I think that's worse, right? At least the other one, you get to reshape the story around the thing. But when the marketing is really good and it gets way out in front and the product's lagging way behind, that disappointment that comes, you never get that audience back. That that customer's gone forever because you sold them a dream and you handed them a bag of bolts, and they're just going to wholesale cut you. Especially, I think, especially in fields that are technical, because a technical audience has this. In the consumer world, you can get away with a little more fluff, but in the technical audience, they're already skeptics. They're already critical. They have a lot of knowledge, and you can't bullshit them very easily. And so you got to be really sensitive to, what does your thing actually do that's valuable? And how do I articulate that in a way that's tangible and meaningful and captivating to that audience? And then how do I make sure that I deliver it when the product shows up? So it's a very hard, we've siloed our way to this place over decades, and it's hard to kind of reel that in. So,
And I do want to reverse a little bit in a second, but just to take the AI conversation to maybe this is relevant and maybe it isn't, but I've got to believe that in today's day and age, with going back to the AI thing, it's like the ability to get a product, minimal viable product, whatever it is, to market seems to be. I mean, it's like this. You don't have to
no
hire
time.
these significant amount of developers and then go and test it out. Like you can test these things out. Is that's what you guys are running into and helping bridge that gap? Because it still is the same problem, right? Like
Same
you've got
problem.
this thing and then
Yep.
maybe people don't want it.
It's the same problem. Okay, so I will first wax positive. It's the same problem, and it allows people to test more rapidly, experiment more smoothly, create things more seamlessly. The negative side is you end up with more garbage because you can, right? Because it's possible, we just do more of it, and therefore it's harder to sift the good from the bad. And what we're finding, at least in our customer base, is that the executive level audience that we talk to has a decoupled reality of what AI can do versus what a developer will tell you AI can do. AI is great at making something sort of skin deep, very thin. It's excellent. It is dangerously bad at making something deep that has to then connect to other systems, that has to have reliability, security, safety built in. It's very, very bad at it because it will convince itself that there is security and reliability without validation that that actually exists. So that's where I think using it for what it's good at, thin, cheap, fast, experiment driven, it's excellent. But like we're working on a HIPAA compliant application right now, and you get down into the weeds, and like you need a lot of experience in people to just make sure that what you're building doesn't have a giant hole in it and it's just going to send a bunch of HIPAA compliant data to the wrong place because you never checked it. And so the health space, I think, has a lot of challenges there. The manufacturing space is the same. Like you can't have your whole plant go down because you have some little security breach. You have some little sort of, we've started calling them worms, not bugs, because they literally like crawl around in the code. And you're just like, what is this thing doing right now? So, yeah, I think that's an interesting both opportunity and problem presenting itself at the same time.
Yeah, and I think what you said too is you said thin and deep. It's also what I'm seeing too is, hey, this is great, and okay, I've tested it and I can do it on 10 transactions, and now all of a sudden somebody says I want to do it for 100,000 transactions. It's like, oh crap, it doesn't work, and
Crap. Yeah.
that's where the big breakdown is.
Yeah, and I mean, like any of these technologies, it's going to get better and better and better. And I think that we're so early days. I was talking to an investor about, I don't know what it was, two or 3 months ago. And I said, I was too young to know what this meant, but this is what it feels like. I feel like it's 1999. Web 1.0 is growing. Everybody's throwing money blindly into everybody who's got a .com next to their brand. We have irrational amounts of money going into basically everything because nobody knows where to put it. And there will be some curve, and I don't know what that looks like, but there will be some curve whereby that pulls back. Everybody goes, okay, hold the phone. Half the shit doesn't work. And then the real version of AI will emerge. Now, with Internet 1, that took 3 years, call it, right? 99 into 2000, we see a crash. 01 gets exacerbated by September 11th, 2, 3, 4. By 2005, you start to come out. We get to 6, 7, and then 8, we get another crash. But like ultimately, the web side of that got rebuilt between, call it 01 and 08, 09. I think this one's just going to happen faster, but we're going to see that same curve. We're going to see this big reel back. And I don't know what the new version looks like, but I know it doesn't look like what it looks like now. And so that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch, is how this whole thing really plays out.
It brings up in, and I know what you said earlier about machine learning versus, but I mean, I think that what's exacerbating, I think is the right word for that, is what what do hey, Claude, today Claude is it, and use Claude code, and then you get the thing that says GPT's code is better, and it's like at some point in time we've got to get to yep, exactly, pick one. They're almost all the same. One is copying the other. Just pick one and stick with it. I for whatever better or worse, I just picked Claude. I'm like, okay, you're my guy right now.
Yeah, and I mean, so my team is intellectually diverse, physically not geolocated, and their jobs are all very different. So we as a company have not mandated one particular tool. So our dev side's obviously all using Cursor. We are not using Claude Code. Claude Code is very token heavy, so we don't use Claude Code that much. So we're using Cursor more, which works great, integrates into the way that we build product. But on the hard goods side, we use almost none. Like there's almost none, because on the CAD side of the world, it's so nascent, and it's so, I mean, you've got Gen AI tools to help you lightweight a part or help you, merge components together. There are things that are valuable, but they're not very fast. They're not very reliable. They are improving. So that side of our business, I'm going to say, operates kind of as it always has. The digital side of the business has so many different options for tools that we've just said to our team, okay, just go explore. And about every month, we all get together and share out, okay, what's working for you? What's working for you? And we're only just now trying to say, okay, what can we get this down to 5 or 8 or 10? I mean, just as an owner of a company, just managing all those subscriptions becomes totally impossible. Every time I look at our expense line, I'm like, what the hell is that? Yeah. And somebody will say, oh, that's this tool that I just bought and I need it. Okay, it was $400. $400 last month. Do we really need that? It better be good.
Yeah, and on that note, and I appreciate the bringing the teams together and understanding it. I'm part of a little cohort group where we share information and things like that, and it's mind blowing to the one guy's like, hey, I did this and I wrote this thing and I made this thing do this, and then I made it do that, and it's like it's just, and it's like, what are you using? And then I'm using blah 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 tool, and I'm using this, and I'm connecting that to this, and it's like it's such a potential rabbit hole, but there's so much. Maybe the positive to your earlier book comment too is the innovation component of it for entrepreneurs and people launching their businesses is mind blowing. And you personally, I know I can dig in. And my wife was doing last night. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "My best friend Claude and I are having a really good chat about something." Yeah. And it's just never ending. You can go down these rabbit holes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys who is in our senior leadership has built an entire business intelligence tool for the company, just like nights and weekends in his spare time for fun. He's like, I just got it connected to QuickBooks, and now I can connect it to this, and I can connect it to that. And look at this. Look what this thing told me. And it's pretty good. The problem with it is, like what I said before, it's really good at the dashboard level. it actively makes stuff up as you go down into the depths of the data side. Like it falsifies ideas, and it's hard because it always presents it in a very convincing way. It's hard to know when that statement is made up, and so it's a bit like a teenager in that regard, where like your teenager is convinced that they are right.
I heard a really good comment the other day. I was prepping for a webinar for a big group, and one of the comments that it encouraged me to make was, AI is a very confident intern.
It is a very, I don't even know that it's at the intern level yet. My 17-year-old will like, he's very convincing. And sometimes you're just like, this is a great argument, but like, just wait till you dig into that a little, and then you'll see why that doesn't make any sense. And, but it does it with conviction, and it does it with authority. And if you're not sort of peeling the onion a little bit, it's hard to know that what just came out is not accurate. So, and I think we all know it's going to get better, and we all know it's going to improve. And I think it's going to make a lot of jobs go away and a lot of new jobs show up that we haven't even thought about yet.
Totally
There's going to be
agree.
a lot of stuff happening that we can't even put it, like just think about in 1999, how many jobs we didn't know about. Like an e-commerce manager wasn't
Mhm.
like that. Nobody knew what that was.
So social media,
Digital,
I
a
mean,
digital marketer. What's a digital marketer?
yeah,
There's hundreds of thousands of digital marketers. There's tens of thousands of digital marketing firms. That that word didn't exist
mhm.
in 99, 2000, 2001. So what are those words that are going to be here? I just think the delta of time will be shorter. Like we're not going to wait a decade for a digital marketer or the version of that. We're going to have it happen in 3 years or 5 years.
I
So
totally agree with that. And interestingly enough, too, it's the um, kind of the new roles and all of these things. Somebody I was talking to the other day was talking about, these companies don't realize it, that they need an AI integration lead person, like an AIO, but it's not IT, right? It has to be, and so it's like that's a role that didn't exist. I don't
it
even know that it
exists.
exists today. I think the smart people are
Mostly
getting
no.
ahead of that. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is like, what should you tie together? What should you keep separate? What should you um, what data is helpful when connected to other data streams, and then what data becomes just more confusing if you connect those together. And you take, like, my business is very simple, right? Like we're a cash flow business, right? Like we operate on a project basis, fundamentally fee for service. We're like a law firm in that way. But you add in, some of our client businesses where you have services, support, product, you have software, you have custom solutions, you have consulting, there's just this stack upon stack upon stack, and you're trying to figure out what dials need to get turned in order to see revenue and EBITDA as a result. And it is very easy to get down a rabbit hole that's taking you in a direction that doesn't matter at all, and spend months sort of scurrying down these paths. And I have this feeling that if you don't have that person you just described, you're going to connect all these together, and you're going to be more confused than you were before.
and 100, and it's exactly, and one, I mean, not to be to come across as it's not a novel idea or whatever. It was about a year and a half ago. I was working with somebody, and they were like, yeah, we need to do. They were a data and analytics company, and just doing the traditional stuff. And I said, do you guys want to take a step in the like massively forward? Be a data ready AI company, because and I was doing some research and talking to somebody the other day. It's like, hey, we want to put an AI receptionist on our website and with a chatbot. And I was like, you do realize that your website is your data. So if your website's crap, your bot is going to just give the answers that are on your crappy website. And so I think that, to your point there, it's like all of these, data components that have become more, in the old days we used to go, hey, data is going to drive transactions, that's going to drive analytics. Like now it's even more important to say data is going to drive true decisions, because you're going to just get to the shitty answer faster than what you did a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, we have I don't know, I'm sure this saying goes in a lot of industries, but shit in, shit out. You have bad data at the ground level, you will get bad information at the upper levels. And the reality is, most, especially large organizations, they are not careful about how and why they manage their data. So they have legacy data that is fully contaminated, sitting inside of valuable data. And so how do you separate legacy contaminated data from valuable data when you yourself, the person who is running the business, cannot identify one from the next? You can't point at that and say, well, just throw that out because that customer doesn't matter. That's an anomaly. How are you going to train an AI to know which data to keep? You're not. And so you're just going to end up learning as you go, because you're going to make a move and it's going to have something happen that you didn't expect. And then you're going to have to come all the way back to the root and say, okay, well, what caused this over here to happen when I made this change? Well, that's because I've got these pieces of anomalous data that are skewing my entire view of my customer base. And we're seeing that at like very basic levels. Companies with, hundreds, if not thousands of web pages that describe the same product 5 different ways. Mm-hmm. And then you want to go automate, you want to automate this. And now you're saying, okay, how do I automate this? I don't even know which one of these 5 ways is right. How do I tell it which one to pick from?
Yeah.
And you end up with, a really challenging problem to solve. So I don't know where that goes.
The only positive spin on that is you potentially get to the bad answer faster. That's all. That's the only.
Yeah, I don't even think that's a spin. I think that's good. I think there's a lot of companies that take years to realize they're getting a bad answer.
Yeah.
And if their process allows them to learn from it, then that's going to work out great. You're going to realize, okay, that's bad and that's bad and that's bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, this one was good. Keep going in that direction and kill off all these other things. But I mean, I can't tell you how many companies we work with that momentum causes bad decision to be made after bad decision just because somebody said, I've already invested $10 million in this, I can't kill it. Right? And like that mindset, I think that's where AI is going to have huge value to large organizations. It's going to show you really fast that where you're investing your money isn't doing anything, isn't helping. So maybe don't do that.
This call took a very different, in a very good way. I think this is different to what what maybe they're not the intention, but just learning about your business and stuff. But I think this is a phenomenal call, and I think it's very relevant today. So as we get close to the time, maybe just you did it in the beginning. Say who you're helping, do your commercial now. Name of the company, website, how to get you, who you're looking to talk to, and if you fit this profile, then give us a shout.
Yeah, so the name of the company is Octo. We are octopd.com, Paul David, which is also legacy because we started as a product development firm. And like once you have that, it's hard to drop it. The companies that we service, as I mentioned, call it post-seed. If you're pre-seed and you're prepping to go after a seed round, that can also work. All the way through sort of the funding rounds on the startup space. We are almost exclusively B2B. We are almost exclusively in some sort of technology-driven solution set. So whether that's manufacturing, autonomy, we do some in defense tech, health tech, those sorts of sectors. And then if you mirror that up to the large corporation world, we support at the startups phase, we support strategy and product. At the corporate space, we support marketing and product. Oftentimes, the strategy group will be more M&A focused or in sort of a very different camp. And our objective in both is the same, which is ensure that the way that you describe what you do aligns with the thing that you make as closely as possible for the maturity of your technology. So the less mature you are, the wider those two things can be apart. The more mature you are, the more those two things need to be very closely aligned. And that doesn't matter if you're a startup or you're a large corporate. The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. So Justin Sirotin, I don't know. I think there's two of us in the whole country with my first name and last name. And yeah, it's an interesting time to be in this space. It's, I'd be repeating everyone else's statements to say it's moving really fast. It's moving really fast, and no one knows where it's going, which is a really fascinating reality.
And I think, I think that's 100% accurate. And I think, my opinion, what's driving that and what's helping, I think people that are more authentic and are doing it in a very, which I get the sense in a very thoughtful manner and things like that, will ultimately win out. Because I think right now there's just so many. I was in the same presentation I was talking about the other day. There's so many people out there that are great at presenting, and have a whiz bang demo, and will ultimately get you to buy a tool that you may or may not need, or a solution you may or not need. But I think that at some point in time, it's going to come down and go, okay, there needs to be a degree of authenticity to this. And the world of business, in my opinion, won't fundamentally change. We'll just go back to what we've been saying a million times. It'll just be faster.
It'll be faster. Yeah. You still people buy things from people. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're going to stop buying things from people. And I think that especially in our space, B2B is still very much it's very much a people transaction. It's not a, click buy e-commerce transaction. So I think that relationship is still going to be super valuable, and it's going to change a lot. And I don't know what that means, but I think that's going to be true.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Well, that's a great comment to end on. I really appreciate the time. I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you.